Alright, so I'm going to do a little story time here. Not exactly the typical type of video I'd make, but I think this is an interesting one. So, back last year in March, obviously, well, if you're watching this later, March 2020, obviously the world changed forever, right? The landscape of what we thought was possible changed. But anyway, so on March 9th, I started a new job, March 9th, 2020. And 2 weeks later, maybe not even, I think it was 2 weeks later though, there have been talks about COVID, that people were not sure like what was going to happen. We talked about, I think at that point people were talking about like social distancing, but there was no masks, suggestions, requirements. I don't exactly remember. Anyway, there was talks about it when I started the job, and it was funny because like my friends and I, we just joked around, and haha, COVID, whatever. Like, had obviously no idea what it was going to turn into. And mind you, this was before there was any reason to take it seriously, because it wasn't a serious thing, or at least nobody perceived it that way. So anyway, I'm at the job, a brand new job for 2 weeks. I get called into a meeting, and my boss, with a very interestingly worried face, just not the kind of face you think you're gonna see on somebody in a place of employment. Like his face looked like he was just seen a ghost, right? Had a family emergency or something like that, right? And he's like, hey guys, listen, this is what the government's saying, state government's saying we all have to disperse, have X amount of employees work from home, we're an essential business, so our manufacturing will continue, blah, blah, blah. So all these regulations were put in place, and I was literally sent home at like 2 p.m. that day, and it was just the weirdest feeling in my life. At about 2 o'clock, driving home from a job I had started 2 weeks ago, not knowing when I would be back in the building, not knowing if I might get laid off, just because of the state of everything, and not knowing if I'd have a job, right? So that was the first time in my life, really, that I ever was in any remote threat of losing my job, right? So it was definitely concerning, it was unsettling is maybe a good word. And I got home that night, and man, I just felt uneasy. I'm like, what the heck, and I was talking to my parents about it, that night and the next day and stuff, and we were all just kind of thinking about it and trying to figure out how serious, it was going to be, and, what we needed to do. Should we go, stock up on food? Like, what is this going to look like, right? And, man, and everybody has their own story, of course. Mine's not particularly unique, I'm sure. But, I'm in this period of time, these next couple days after that, just like running all these things through my head. And long story short, a lot of the questions were answered for us, right? The whole, we were obviously told at the beginning, 2 weeks, everything would open back up, everything would be hunky-dory. Well, that obviously didn't happen. But, for that 2 week period, I did the best I could working from home. But obviously 2 weeks into a job, working from home is difficult when the job requires you to be on site to see the product that's being manufactured. So we adapted. We made it work the best we could. And I actually did learn a fair amount during that time, surprisingly enough. But it was just a weird time. So as a result, though, of the new job and working from home, I had a fair amount of free time. And more than I ever would have before, right? So you can't really go out and party or anything, right? You can't go travel in a sense, right? So there's a lot of, between social norms and actual technical legal repercussions, there was a lot of reasons why you weren't doing a whole lot. Everybody fun was that? So anyway, it was a couple, 2, 3, 4 weeks in, so it's April now, and I had this wild hair of an idea, and I'm like, I've always wanted to do it. I've always wanted to paint this truck that I'm currently driving. I'd gotten it had some shady body work on it. It was just 100 at the time, 80-ish, 175,000 miles in New York State. Also just beat up the paint, you know, with winter time and everything else. It just needed paint bad. And I was like, man, you know, I didn't want to pay somebody to do it. It'd be too much money for what the truck was worth. But I'm like, I'm a hands-on guy. This would be a cool thing to learn. I'm like, I want to try painting it myself. And if there was any time in U.S. history, world history, that I would be able to do this on a daily driver, it was then. So with my harebrained idea, I ordered materials, did a ton of research, bought tools, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. And the span of the next month and a half to 2 months, I got the material in, I had done all my research, I had done a bunch of prep work that I could on the truck before I'd even gotten some stuff in. And long story short, I fully painted my truck in the garage at my parents' house, you know, in about a month span. You know, this required, because I was still working, of course, required some late nights, required some, you know, some serious dedication to it. Had some hurdles in the, you know, within the process, but I did get it done. It came out pretty darn good, as good as I wanted it to for what this truck is. Let's put it that way. It's no show car. Doing it again, I know I could do a lot better, of course, just, you know, having the experience I have from the first time I did it. But overall, it came out pretty good, and I'm very happy with it. But anyway, it was just a very interesting time in my life, because it was humbling knowing that your job security may have been on the line. It was also humbling, just you know, I kind of taught myself and learned this new trade, and I got a deep respect for people who do it for a living and just the level of skill they have. So that was like, you know, a really cool experience in and of itself. And I don't know, it was just a time period. I'm sure it was for a lot of people, but it was a time period that, as bad as it was in a lot of ways, you know, I really, man, I did my best to turn it into something positive in my life. You know, man, you go on social media and see people talk about binge watching Netflix and this and that and whatever, and I didn't want that to be me. I wanted to take this unique time in history, you know, and not to minimize, obviously, right, people dying, but, you know, I only have so much control over any of that. So for my own life personally, I said to myself, well, you know what, let me have a positive impact on my life, you know, the best that I can. And I'll actually mention, by the way, too, you know, I really went out of my way during that time to reach out to friends and people I hadn't talked to in a while, and just check in on them, make sure they were good, and mental health wise, and their families and all that. You know, I helped my neighbor with a lot of stuff. Like, I really, truly, if I'm being honest, probably for the first time in my life, made a distinct, active effort to go out of my way to help others. You know, just because I knew people were having hard times, and I knew how my own mental state was, which it wasn't bad per se, but I mean, despite the project and everything, I was still kind of bored, and like, you know, I'm a social guy and couldn't do all that kind of stuff. So it really, I think, turned me into a more selfless person. You know, I think a young guy trying to build his career aggressively, it's easy for you to fall into the trap of selfishness, and being really self-absorbed and focusing only on that personal goal, which is good to a degree, but then you also gotta branch out and you know, be kind to others and help others, right? So I guess it gave me the balance that I maybe didn't have in my life before. I was never like, you know, I was never actively selfish. I just wasn't actively selfless, if that makes sense. As much as I think I am now. And I think I've carried that on for the most part. You know, hey, we could probably all do a better job of it. But I've gotten better at it. So yeah, you know, just kind of an interesting, I think it's kind of an interesting story. You know, I'd love to see to hear other people's early COVID stories. You know, and see what people did to kind of make lemonade out of lemons. Stupid cliche, but you know, whatever. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.